welcome to the Reconnaissance YouTube channel. My name is Rafaela. You probably never seen my face before, and if you have, that's scary because I don't even post on the internet like that. So before we do jump into the video, I would like to give a quick disclaimer that this video and all my videos in general are meant for the purpose of education and spreading awareness, and in no way, shape or form is my content meant to be malicious or defamatory to anyone involved or mentioned in my videos. So let's get right into it, guys. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about a solved case of Kendrick Johnson. Well, one could say solved, but I don't really think. I think there is a lot of things that still need to be uncovered, and justice needs to be brought not only to him, but to his family as well. So that is the reason I've chosen this topic to be my first video. So Kendrick Johnson was 70 years old and lived in Valdosta, Georgia. He lived with his mum, Jacqueline Johnson, who also went by Jackie, and his father, Kenneth Johnson. And Kendrick himself was a sophomore at Lowndes High School. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not from America, if you haven't noticed already. Kendrick himself was described as a very nice, sweet, genuine person by his family, his friends. So just overall, like, a sweetheart to be around. And not only that, he was a 3-sport athlete, so he was top-notch. And that's on period. He was top-notch. He did want to go specifically to professional football, and his dreams were well, like, he was gonna make it like 110%. If you're doing 3 sports and you're managing your like schoolwork, listen, you're miles ahead of me, because I don't know how he managed to do it, but he did. And that just shows how much of an amazing person he was. Not only was he a nice person, but he was committed. That just makes this case all the more sad. And in a news report, his mother was quoted saying that football was essentially his life. He was so passionate about it, and he knew deep down that he was going to make it. And honestly, I do believe that, because if you're able to balance 3 sports, being a sophomore at high school, I believe that's like, I want to say like year 10, year 11, if I'm not mistaken, if we're comparing it to like Britain, like school system. So if you're managing to actually balance all those things and keep your head on straight, says a lot about your personality and just actually the type of person that Kendrick was. However, this would all sadly come to an end on January 10th, 2013. I just want to give a bit of a perspective on the actual school. So Lowndes High School was an institution for over 3,000 students. At this actual institution, it was a common practice to, like, instead of buying a locker, just simply putting your belongings inside the rolled up gym mats, which would be in like a corner in the gym. So this is something that Kendrick used to do himself. So instead of paying for a locker, he would get his belongings, like his trainers, and he would put them inside the actual hole. So if you imagine it, gym mats get rolled up, right, and then they would be stored upright, and so he would leave his belongings in there, and that way he didn't have to pay for a locker. However, tragedy would soon sadly struck the school and the hearts of those in that community on January 11, 2013, when a student's body was found in those exact gym mats. Kendrick's lifeless body was found in the rolled up gym mats at Lowndes High School. The way his body was actually positioned was with his head facing down, one arm above his actual head, one arm at his side. So if you think about it, he was positioned in a way as if he was reaching for one of his belongings. And if we remember back, that is what he used to actually do. Now, if we get into the actual details of the case, we're going to uncover why a lot of these things don't actually make sense, and why I feel there still needs to be justice served for Kendrick and his family. So the gym mat itself, rolled up in its vertical height, is 6 feet tall, and that in centimeters is like 182 centimeters. And Kendrick himself is 5'10" in height. And when the actual gym mats are rolled up, the hole, obviously, because once it rolls up, there's a hole inside, measures 14 inches, which is roughly like 37 centimeters. This, in comparison to Johnson's 19-inch shoulders, already doesn't make sense. And so this was the first red flag, and one of the many reasons why Kendrick Johnson's family is still seeking justice. And on this information alone, it highly contradicts the theory that police will later come to. Within 24 hours, the police came to their verdict and ruled the death due to positional asphyxiation. They determined this because there were shoes at the bottom of the gym mat, and with one arm being raised above his head and one at his waist, it was assumed that he was attempting to reach his shoes. He got trapped in, was not able to remove himself out after falling into the gym mat. The first two autopsies concluded that there were signs of blunt force trauma, and so this will technically go against the theory of the police, because if he was reaching for his shoe, there's no reason for him to have blunt force trauma. This, once again, another red flag, and raised more questions about how the police were actually carrying out this case and whether they were overlooking certain details, because for a case to be like fully ruled out and concluded within 24 hours, I don't think it should be like that. How within 24 hours of arriving at the crime scene, doing an autopsy and all that, how are you able to come to a conclusion so easily? Did you have time to speak to witnesses, get videotape? How is this all done in 24 hours? Make it make sense. The second autopsy was actually hired privately by the family themselves, because the family, rightfully so, was not satisfied with the autopsy that was carried out on the behalf of the police. Within this autopsy that was actually carried out by the private pathologist, there were signs of hemorrhaging to the side of his neck, and this suggested that he didn't actually die of positional asphyxiation, which was initially determined by the police, but by some sort of blunt force or trauma which happened to his neck. And the pathologist actually ruled the death as non-accidental, and it was actually some sort of blunt force trauma. And in the words of the actual pathologist, some sort of 45-pound dumbbell hit to the side of his neck is what actually caused his death. Now, if that isn't already enough, it was actually found that some of Kendrick Johnson's organs were missing, and in place of his organs was newspaper. Now, this is extremely alarming because, first of all, his family weren't aware that his organs were missing, and when they questioned it, the funeral home said simply that this was practice to simply put in the newspapers, and they just assumed that the family already knew. Now, this is an issue because if Kendrick's body was missing its organs, and if the police were aware that his organs were missing initially, the family should have been alerted right away. However, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation actually claimed that when they sent off the body to the actual funeral home, all the organs were in place. But on the other side of the table, the coroner had said that once they did receive the body at the funeral home, that the organs were already not there, because apparently they were too decomposed to be sent off to the funeral home. Then at what point and who is responsible for taking his organs? Because if we are going by what the police said, and he did die of positional asphyxiation, that doesn't lead to his organs being missing. If the police are saying that they sent the body with the organs, but the actual funeral home is saying that they never received the organs, where did they go? Because if it was too decomposed to have been at the funeral home, where did the police place the organs? And even if they did, you can't simply do this without the permission of the family. Once the Johnson family did find out about this occurring with their son and his whole organs being missing, they did try to sue the funeral home for mishandling his body, and rightfully so, because they didn't get told that their son's organs was missing. The good thing that did come of this was that the US Attorney of Georgia did re-announce that they would review the case once again, because, as I said, within 24 hours they had completely come to the conclusion of the case that it was simply positional asphyxiation, even though there were so many red flags and so many things that they did overlook. Okay, so let's actually talk a little bit about the crime scene. The shoes that he was supposedly reaching for were actually sitting on top of a pool of blood. Now, this doesn't make sense, because surely if Kendrick had bled out the blood should have been on top of the shoes. Blood itself was actually below the shoes and it was dried up, and the shoes were placed on top. It just doesn't make sense. How does the blood end up below the shoe and not on top of it? Just by this, what a lot of people believe is that the shoes were placed on purpose on top of the blood to make it seem that is what Kendrick was initially reaching for. In addition to this, a hoodie and black and orange shoes were found in the gym, but the police decided that this was not going to get taken into evidence for whatever reason. Once again, I'm trying to make one and one make two just to make it make sense, because if it's at the crime scene, they have to take it in for, well, they should take it in for evidence, because what Kendrick's DNA was found in one of those items, that could have led to more answers within the case, which is why I don't agree with the case being wrapped up within 24 hours, because how do you conduct a proper investigation like that? And on top of that, traces of blood was found on walls inside the gym. Now, the police did actually test the blood, bearing in mind the blood was actually already fully dried. They tested the blood and no matches came back, and so they basically just said that likely the blood had been there for a long time and it had nothing to do with the case. Now, my question is for the school here. If you see blood on the fucking gym wall, why are you not cleaning that? Isn't that like surely like health violations, health and safety violations? Because why are you leaving dried up blood on the wall? Surely this should have raised so many red flags. Once again, the police just swept it under the rug like they like to do. Not in just this case, like in many cases. Now, I know we're probably both thinking the same thing. Why doesn't the police just check the actual like security cameras? Because if there's an institution, nonetheless an educational institution, there's bound to be cameras everywhere, and there are cameras in the actual gyms. However, what I'm actually about to say is actually going to be so like heartbreaking, because like this was messed up from the start. This was actually messed up from the start. So after months and months, years, the family finally got access to the footage, which would have easily revealed what actually happened to Kendrick on that day. And the footage that they received was chopped up, and the moment that would have caught everything that happened to Kendrick was completely cut out. Well, it wasn't mentioned exactly that it was cut out, but that bit was missing. So they had experts run through the footage, and certain bits of what occurred on that day was completely missing. The only footage that they actually had showing of Kendrick Johnson was him entering the gym and like jogging around in the gym. But the moment where he supposedly reached in to grab whatever he wanted to get from the gym mat was nowhere to be seen. And so the school was questioned. A lot of people turned to the school and were like, so where's the footage gone? In total, an hour worth of footage was actually missing. So within that hour, if they actually had the footage, it was easily revealed what actually happened to Kendrick. Okay, so now I'm actually going to talk about the family's views, because family has not rested, and I'm telling you that in these years that have all passed, I believe nearly 8 years, his mum especially is always fighting for his justice. Their main beliefs is that the police mishandled the case completely due to his race. So Kendrick is obviously Black, African American as they say in the US. They believe that's the reason that they actually mishandled the case. And in 2014, the Johnson family actually filed a lawsuit against the school. Now, this lawsuit was mainly because there wasn't actually an incident with Kendrick where he was being harassed by some students at the actual high school, but this was supposedly neglected by the school. And the family believes this is what actually led up to this situation. And so they believe that if the school had done their job and taken care of the situation there and then, it would have never got to this actual stage of Kendrick sadly having to lose his life, though this hasn't been completely confirmed. Some sources do allege that the people responsible for Kendrick's death were two brothers who had a previous altercation with him over a year ago. Because this wasn't handled appropriately by the school, it led up to this point and Kendrick losing his life. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about these two brothers, Brian and Brandon Bell. So the father of Brian and Brandon Bell is actually an FBI agent. And so the Johnson family actually accused the FBI of manipulating the case, school officials, the police. And so they believe that sons were the actual culprits of this crime. And because their father is an FBI agent, he was basically able to get his children out of trouble. Now, none of this has been confirmed, but it is speculation. Right, guys, so we've come to the end of today's case. If you did enjoy this topic, I will try and leave some links below, anything that I can find that will help support the family. And if you want to support me, press the subscribe button, press the like button, and I hope you guys see my face more often on your home screen, on your recommendations. Put me in your watch later. That's where I'm gonna be. Stay tuned, guys. Bye.